Today I'm going to be talking about 9 telltale signs of depression, some of which you may be aware of, some of which might surprise you. Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some of the characteristics of depression, some of the symptoms that you may know about, and some that may actually surprise you a little bit. But before we get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a replacement or substitute for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those two things out of the way, let's start talking about depression, which is one of the most common mental health conditions out there. In any given year, 7 to 10% of the population will experience clinical depression, and it is the single greatest cause of disability worldwide. So it's a very common and a very interfering condition. And yet, for a lot of people, they know some of the symptoms of depression, but not all of the various components and all of the various signs that may indicate the presence of depression. And so today I want to go over a scope of symptoms that people will experience in depression. So telltale sign of depression number 1 is mood difficulties. Now, this is one of the most commonly thought of symptoms of depression and one of the most well-known symptoms of depression, difficulties with mood, feelings of sadness, feeling down, feeling blue, a real sense of just despair and sadness. But it can also take the form of irritability. So for some people, they don't necessarily feel the subjective sense of sad, but they just feel kind of irritable and on edge and really short-fused. And for others, it's not so much that they feel down or sad or even irritable. They just feel a tremendous sense of emptiness or despair. I once heard it referenced by a client. It was almost like somebody took a giant ice cream scoop and just scooped out their insides. And so what it felt like for them was that there was just this tremendous sense of emptiness and nothingness inside of them. So those mood symptoms are one of the most well-known symptoms of depression. Telltale sign number 2 is a loss of interest and pleasure in almost all of a person's usual activities. This is a tendency for people to just not get any sense of enjoyment or reward out of things that they may have enjoyed before. So for someone with depression, they may find that they just don't really get any enjoyment out of hobbies or recreational activities or socializing. And they just want to be left alone. They don't want to do anything, and they want to just withdraw on their own. This symptom is sometimes referred to as anhedonia. And essentially what anhedonia means is an inability to experience pleasure or enjoyment. So even if a person is doing something that they know they should be enjoying, so they're engaging in a recreational activity or a hobby that they've enjoyed in the past, or they're spending time with friends or family, and they know that they should be feeling enjoyment, they should be having a good time, but they just can't feel it. They just don't feel anything. They're not enjoying themselves at all and can't muster up the sense of enjoyment. That's the anhedonia. Another symptom of this anhedonia that sometimes people don't realize is that it can have a negative effect on sex drive and libido. And so it's not uncommon for people with depression to just not have any interest or drive in sex. And this can lead to big problems in relationships, and it can lead to a person really sort of questioning or beating themselves up for why they're not interested in sex anymore, and that can further contribute to the feelings of depression or hopelessness or worthlessness, which I'll be talking about in a little bit. Telltale sign number 3 is a change in appetite. And this can go either both ways. Typically, the way I see it is that it's associated with a loss of appetite. So people with depression will tend not to feel hungry. They'll wake up in the morning and maybe skip breakfast, skip lunch, and before they know it, by the end of the day, they haven't eaten anything because they just didn't feel hungry at all throughout the day. For others, they will force themselves to eat because they know they should be eating, but they just don't feel any sense of hunger. They just don't feel any sense of enjoyment out of the food. And that can, again, refer back to that anhedonia, not even getting any pleasure or enjoyment out of eating. It's almost like food loses a bit of its taste. For others, it can be a tendency to overeat. And when we talk about overeating, it's not so much the person has a raging appetite, but it's more that they're eating out of trying to get a sense of comfort. So a person typically craves certain types of food. So things that are high in carbohydrates or really sweet and sugary. It's just a way of trying to feel better through food. And the food typically isn't the healthiest food. So it's not like a person is going to be eating a lot of celery or a lot of salads. It's more foods that are easy to prepare, easy to get into, and that tend to sort of satisfy a person right away. So it's almost like the eating is a way of numbing some of the emotional pain that a person's experiencing. Telltale sign number 4 is difficulty with sleep. And this can take different forms. So often I see it in terms of a person having problems falling and staying asleep. So either they takes them a long time to fall asleep. So they're tossing and turning in bed, staring at the ceiling can take hours to fall asleep. And then when a person does fall asleep, they may be asleep for a few hours, and then they wake up throughout the night and have difficulty falling back asleep. For some people, this can take the form of early morning waking. So they wake up at 3:30 in the morning or 4 in the morning and can't get back to sleep. And so they just lay in bed until it's time to get up, and they just feel exhausted because they haven't gotten that full night's sleep. The other side of it is that people can sometimes oversleep. So they spend a lot of time in bed and they sleep excessively. I often see this in people who are essentially just using sleep to escape. It's a way of getting away from the depression feelings, a way of getting away from the sadness or the emptiness. And so I sleep so that I don't feel anything. It's kind of that break or that reprieve from the depression. Telltale sign number 5 is related to something we call psychomotor agitation or psychomotor slowing. And what this means is that for people with depression, they can sometimes experience a sense of just kind of restlessness, almost like a physical restlessness. So kind of an agitation, difficulty sitting still, hand wringing, and just a sense that I can't sort of settle down, I can't relax. Now, for some people, this can take the form of quite the opposite, which is psychomotor slowing. So everything is a little bit slower. So the person talks slower. They may talk more quietly. They may find that they're moving slower, or that their thinking or their ability to sort of think and talk and respond to questions is slower. It takes longer for them to say something. So this psychomotor slowing or this psychomotor sort of agitation is one of the symptoms of depression that a lot of people typically don't think about or don't know about. Telltale sign number 6 is fatigue. a general sense of fatigue, exhaustion, feeling worn out. So it's quite common for people, in part because the lack of sleep, but also just in part because of the overall effect that depression has on the person, for them to just feel really worn out and tired, even if they're not doing anything. So, someone with depression may spend the day and they haven't really left their home, they haven't really done very much in terms of physical activity, but they feel exhausted and drained. Even simple things, or seemingly simple things, like brushing teeth or having a shower, just feels so exhausting and so overwhelming, and they wear a person out. And so, this exhaustion and fatigue is a physical manifestation of depression. It's physically the person is incapable or has difficulty really doing things because they're so tired all the time. Telltale sign number 7 is a tendency for a person to experience feelings of worthlessness or guilt, a tendency to really beat themselves up or get down on themselves, a sense that I'm no good at anything, or I'm going to fail at everything I do, or a sense that I'm letting everyone down, or that I'm being a real downer to my family. I'm kind of useless, and I'm not really contributing anything. So it's this real sense of negativity towards myself, and a tendency to really beat myself up and really get down on myself if things don't go the way I would like them to go, or if I make a mistake. So a tendency to really get down on myself. Also, a tendency to experience a fair bit of guilt. So, unreasonable guilt. So, guilt about things that maybe I shouldn't even feel guilty about. So, in extreme cases, people can experience guilt about stuff that they don't have control over. So, guilt about things going on in the world that aren't even their fault, but they feel a sense of real guilt and tend to beat themselves up about. Telltale sign number 8 is a tendency for a person to have difficulties thinking and processing information. What we often see with people in depression is that they can have concentration problems, difficulty focusing, difficulty maintaining their attention on a task, problems with short-term memory, forgetting appointments, forgetting where they put their keys, forgetting that they had a conversation with somebody, or forgetting what somebody told them. Difficulty making decisions, so problems actually sort of thinking through a decision, in part because it's hard for them to kind of process information and think through a decision, but also partly because of self-doubt, because they don't think that they're going to make good decisions anyway. So this is one symptom that a lot of people aren't really aware of, and they think that they're going crazy or they're losing their mind because they don't think as clearly as they used to. It's hard for them to keep focus. They're finding that they're forgetting a lot of things, and they wonder if they're losing their mind or if they're getting early signs of dementia. In fact, in elderly populations, this is sometimes referred to as pseudo-dementia. So the people who are elderly, who are experiencing depression, will have these cognitive difficulties, will have these problems with attention and memory, and they can get mistakenly labeled as having depression when in fact, dementia, when in fact it's not dementia, it's depression, but it's not really being recognized as depression. So those cognitive effects, those impairments in terms of thinking and concentration and memory, those are symptoms that a lot of people typically aren't aware of, that is a part of depression. And finally, telltale sign number 9 refers to thoughts of death. Thoughts that, maybe it would be better if I wasn't here. Maybe it would be better for my family if I wasn't here. I just want to go to sleep and never wake up. So these thoughts of death can sort of fall on a continuum from what we refer to as passive thoughts of death, just a general sense of not wanting to be here and not wanting to be in the world anymore, to more sort of active thoughts about suicide and a person thinking about taking their life. And that can be on a continuum as well, where people will have sort of vague thoughts about taking suicide or taking their life, to more serious thoughts where they're actually planning and figuring out what they'll do. And depending on the level of thought that they've put into the suicide, it varies the amount of risk. So as a clinician, I'll do a thorough assessment in terms of suicide risk to figure out if these are just thoughts related to their depression and just a part of their depression, or if this is something more serious that they may be at risk for. So those are the 9 telltale symptoms of depression, the 9 telltale signs of depression. You probably knew some of them, and maybe some of them were surprising or unexpected to you. But I hope this has been helpful if you think you might be experiencing depression, or if you think that there's a family member or a loved one who's experiencing depression. Maybe hopefully this video has been helpful in terms of giving you a better sense of what depression is, beyond just feeling sad or feeling down. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments about this, so please leave me some comments down below. If you found this video helpful and are interested in seeing more of my videos, please hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and you'll be alerted every Thursday when I post a new video. So that's it for today. Thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.